What's a beat?
Oh, like I'll take like a quick pause and then I'll welcome
Oh,
everyone to the podcast. And then I'll
sorry.
welcome you to the podcast. No, you're fine. I loved it. That was great. If anything, let's just go from here. Welcome to the
Okay.
podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, I
Um,
love it. What's a beat? That was the beat. Welcome everyone to the podcast. Welcome Daniel Kim. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm stoked. For those that somehow don't know you yet, could you give us a little introduction on yourself?
Yeah. My name is Daniel Kim, and I'm a photographer. And I shoot weddings, and that is the direction, not the direction, but that's the order of things that I see. I'm a photographer first, and then I just show up at a wedding, versus I'm a wedding.
Ooh, I love, can you like expand on that? What does that like mean to you? I love that.
Yeah. So basically, like it's kind of like when you think of wedding photography, right? And you don't just talk to only photographers, you talk to anybody. And you say wedding photography, and there's a certain image that usually pops up in. And even when I say this, right, everyone knows the types of images that pop up in mind. But why does it have to be like that, right? Like 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I don't know if there were wedding photographers. I think it was just like photographers. And they shot how they shot at a wedding. So whether they were street photographers or portrait photographers, that's what they were wedding. Because usually I don't think there was an industry. And
Mm,
so when I say I'm a photographer first, it kind of like, well, usually what I say is I see myself as a person and a human first. And what that means is, one, we as photographers, we are observers of the world around us. And I think what a lot of people forget, and when I have people come and I do mentor sessions and I do group settings and I teach, and I always ask, okay, you guys are telling me all these things about what you want out of photography, out of your business. And then I work backwards. I go, okay, what do you want out of your photography? Not wedding photography. What do you want out of your photography? And then I go, okay, what do you want out of your life? Because photography is our observations of the world, right? Because it's not like another medium like painting or anything else where you can literally create something out of nothing. Like you might get influences from the world, but you can create like a creature or a scene that never existed before. Photography, we rely on the world and this and what's in front of us. But most of us sometimes, and maybe us as a society as a whole, we forget to actually like live in the world. And you can't observe something that you can't see. Like we talk about seeing, but we only usually talk about it from the perspective of through the lens. You
mm,
see
I,
with your eyes first, and
mhm.
then you photograph, and then and result. I know it's like obviously it's like, well, duh, Daniel, but that's the thing is sometimes most people only think of things when they're maybe where they only think about photography when they're on a job.
Mm.
They think about different angles when they're on a job. But if you're only practicing that, if you even if you did it a shoot every day of the week for an hour, that's only 6 hours that you're practicing that week.
Yeah.
You want to get your 10,000 hours in, I mean, constantly. If you can constantly do this, that'll help you get your 10,000. That's just my personal that's my personal path I've taken, and just something that I've noticed has helped people just with that simple mind mindset, you know.
No, I love that. Has this always been your approach to photography, or is this something that you've like kind of developed? Because I think we are, I think, coming out of this phase of photography, but I got started almost like a decade ago now. And so
Mhm.
I like barely got a glimpse of what I would call like more natural photography before we got stuck in
Mhm.
the like really posed, really curated,
Yeah.
really structured kind of era of photography that we've seen over the last several years. And
Mhm.
I think that's shifting, which I'm really excited about. But obviously it's been a very curated art for the last
Mhm.
like several years. So, have you always had this approach, or is it something that you've had to like really develop over time? Like, how has it kind of come to you?
It's something that was always there, and that I've developed. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years, right? So, I started when I was 19, and then didn't stop. I haven't stopped. Um, and it's something that I had to just kind of develop on my own over time because, I mean, I think a lot of people have to realize how different the landscape is to learn photography, even like subjects like this. Like when I was fucking starting, like YouTube was all about these cat videos. There was like a channel. The fuck is a channel? You know, like subscribers. There was no subscriber button. I literally had to track down a friend who took photography in high school and be like, "Hey, can I have your notes?" Because there was nothing online.
It's such
Like
a
if you
different
had to
scene.
find something, yeah, you had to like go to a forum, like with like people who usually shot like birds. And then no, like that's totally fine, you know, like but those were the types of forums I had to go through to get info. And so no one was talking about this kind of stuff unless it was in art school. But then in art school, it's you're just surviving. Like you're this college student, you're surviving. This didn't really happen until I learned from this guy. His name is John Dolan, and like their question kind of goes into this like journey of how I how I got to the style that I shoot now. Because until like 5 years ago, 5 years ago, I was very like classic wedding, classic, like superpose. Like I shot on a Contax 645 with Fuji 400 film, and like everything was dreamy and it was curated. Like it was very perfect, and because that's what everyone wanted. And then I had this like um, family situation happen. And long story short, like my dad's house caught on fire while I was at a wedding, and
Oh my god.
we had to end up taking care of everything by ourselves without the insurance company. So we had to tear it down ourselves. Like we had to, figure out how to build it ourselves, like all this stuff. And this was in the middle of wedding season. And what happened was while I was at the wedding and I got this call from my dad, I'm like shooting these details, like these flat lays of these invites. And then uh, I get this call, and then basically it's like, hey, dad's house is on fire, blah, 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 blah. And then finding out that, oh, no one's coming to save us. Like insurance company isn't coming to save us. No contractor or firefighter. Well, firefighters obviously
Yeah.
save
I
us.
hope they were
But
there.
like, yeah, but no one's like coming to like clean the house and demo it and like
Mhm.
tell us what to do. It's like it was all on me and my dad. And so I'm at this wedding, realizing this, shooting this flat lay with this green ribbon and like that's the style I shot in.
Mhm.
And then bridesmaid comes out and she goes, "Hey, can you switch out this dusty green ribbon for like this sage ribbon? Because like it was like a really big deal for us to like figure out these colors," and which I understand, but then at that moment I'm like, I don't give a fuck about this.
Mm.
Like, this is so stupid. That's in my head at the time,
Yeah.
you know? Like out of all the things to worry about in the world, you're worried about this stuff that you're gonna get. I spent 45 minutes laying out for one photo, and then and then, you know, while like I went home that night, I was a new dad, didn't see my family, like I was like a new dad in the middle of busy season, and like, obviously told my wife, hey, this is what happened. I got to go to my dad's house as soon as this wedding's done, and we got to demo this house, and ourselves. And while I'm demoing this house, I'm just thinking like, photographs that I take mean that I don't feel anything.
Mm.
And because, you know, when something like that happens and you're literally in the thick of it, you really think about a lot of things. And so I decided at that time, hey, if I can't change my photography in 5 years, I'm quitting. Like, I have 5 years, I have a deadline. And so I went on this search for anybody who was shooting in a way that resonated with, that made me feel. Not, and it was a difference between like, oh, this is a photograph of an emotion, like these people are running, and it's yes, yes, and it's like, oh my God, so like epic. It wasn't like I wasn't looking for that. At the time, there was two styles, like this perfect style and this very like free, very like, you know, spinning and jumping and movement. But what I was looking for was something that I could see in a museum. Who
Mm.
was making work where I could see this in a gallery, right? Not an ad, in a gallery. I could see this wedding photograph in a gallery. And I searched for 2 years, or actually 3 years. Um, and I made a commitment like I have 5 years to do this or I'm quitting. And in 2020, uh, or in 2019, I found this guy, John Golden. Saw this photograph, and it was like not technically perfect at all, but it made me feel something. And I remember getting super high.
Love
I don't know if you
that.
want to mute that. I don't know,
Heck
but it's just like
yes.
one of those times. Yeah, it's just
Yes.
like,
No, I
hey,
love it.
I was on a break. There was no weddings happening, but I just remember like getting like, you know, just being in this state of mind, and then I'm looking through his like website on my phone, like sitting in the backyard, and I'm like looking at these photographs. And I'm like, why do these like why am I feeling these things? Like, why is this making me feel this way? Like, I shouldn't like this photo, but for some reason I do. I shouldn't like this photo because it's blurry and it's like a little out of focus, and it's just like, but it's like it's doing something to me. And then I thought, oh, I could see these in a gallery. This is the one person I found who I'm like, this could be in a gallery. And so I reached out to him and I went to go learn from him. And ever since then, and that was in 2020. And then the pandemic happened, and I didn't have a chance to like exercise what I learned immediately, but I did have a lot of time over the pandemic because I went to learn from him like in February, like end of February, and then
Mm.
I think like 3 weeks later, the lockdowns happened, and I'm just like, okay, I got 2 years left, and now how long is this gonna last?
Yep.
And I just had a lot of time to think. And during that time is when I kind of was like, you know, what really matters? And I think it's really important for people to have that time because your photography reflects yourself and your photography reflects who you are as a person. And so you really do have to kind of get a handle on what you value and what you cherish before you can like go and photograph because you want to see into a photographer's soul. Like, don't ask me questions with the photographs because it says everything. Art comes from the artist, so the artist has to take care of this first.
Mm.
And when I saw this guy's photographs, his name's John, I met him in person, and I go, yeah, this matches up. And I think what a lot of people don't know, if you've never heard of him, is he's been doing it for over 35.
Oh, wow.
Yes, like Martha Stewart found his photographs, and I think she was like, I need these in my magazine. Like, he's OG. And I think when you look for a mentor, you need to look for people who are, well, one, who have lasted. Like,
Mm.
how can you imagine? A lot of people have an exit, right? oh, I'll do this for 5 years and then 7 years or 10 years. And then what's my exit? This guy's still shooting. And I looked at that and I go, that's the path.
Yeah, that's someone
And
that loves their craft.
loves their craft. And so that's how I got here. So since 2020 until now, what I'm known for, like the photography I'm known for, has only been from the last 2 years, 3 years. Like it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is
But here's the
crazy because
thing.
in my head, I'm like, you've
Yes.
been doing this forever.
But what I'm known for now has only been from the last 3 years. But what happens is the first 10 years is all tech, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of people ask like, well, how can I learn to see? Well, if you're worried about technical aspects, that's taking up brain space. So what I figured out how to do is learning how to see when I'm not thinking about aperture, shutter speed, all
mm,
that. Because if you can learn to see it first, then you bring the camera up, then you start thinking about that stuff, and then you go. But you won't even start thinking about aperture, shutter speed, ISO, unless you see it first.
mm.
And so when I go out and scout, or when I just go out in life, or just taking a walk or running, all my bandwidth is on just like seeing and observing because honestly, like it's a pretty good way to live to like actually appreciate it.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
ask like how
yeah,
that personally manifests for you, like what your practices are for like you said, like taking care of yourself as a human and just being a human and how that translates into your work. Like, how do you just gave us one, but I'm assuming you have a couple. Like, how do you take care of yourself or prioritize being like a human experiencing things first and foremost rather than a
um,
photographer?
yeah. Well, one of the big things I do, and it might not be for everyone, is one of the big things I do every day is do um, meditation. And I do transcendental meditation, where I went and learned from a teacher.
Mm,
Um, and you sit for 20 minutes twice a day, um, and then you know, you I call it dropping in. I drop into what is considered a flow state, and because if I can learn to drop into a flow state twice a day, um, it gets easier to do it when it comes to shooting a web. The other thing too is with meditation is it leaves you with an open mind. So because you're processing, you have to think like, when's the last time that you sat for 20 minutes doing nothing? Like nothing, not a podcast, not running, not on your phone, not checking your emails, not listening to music, like where you just sat there for 20 minutes. And
it's
I think
pretty
because
rare.
it's rare, but I do feel like people used to do that a lot um, before the smartphone because you're waiting in line at the grocery store, you're just sitting there, like processing your day. And all that stuff takes up space in your brain. So when you meditate, you're clearing out all that because you can think about that stuff when you meditate, but it's clearing it out, leaving you open for new things to come in. And so learning how to do that has allowed me to be like, hey, here's a wedding. If I'm at a wedding, here's a scene happening. This is usually how I take a photograph, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about what's happening and being like, and it's always the what if. Well, what if I shot it like this instead? Or instead of this is how you should, it's more, what if I did this? What if I shot it from a totally different angle? What if I shot it with a totally different lens? But for a lot of people, and this is one of the biggest things I learned from John, that's risk. You
Yeah.
don't know what you're going to get, but you can either play it safe and get like what you know you're going to get. There's no surprise there. And to be honest, if you know what you're going to get already, right, the client probably knows too. And there's no surprise when they open up the gallery. You want there to be an element of surprise. But how can you surprise your client if you can't even surprise yourself? And that's where the open mind comes in, hence the meditation.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. And I love the idea of wanting to surprise our clients. I think like my brain immediately goes to the amount of times that I have probably complained. I've heard people complain about the like I sent a gallery and I didn't get a response. Um and it's an interesting like train of thought to think about like, well, how many times have they basically seen that gallery in different formats, like just with different people in it?
Yes.
That's crazy to
Yes.
think about. I'm like, yeah, they may not have even been surprised. They might have been like, yes, this is exactly what I expected. And what else are they
Mm-hmm.
going to say about that?
I mean, I think a good exercise is always to take your portfolio and mix it up with the people in your market, right? And give it to somebody and who has, I mean, maybe they have a similar editing style or anything like that.
Mm,
You give it to somebody, you go, pick out my photos. And that's, you know, how do you stand out? Well, literally ask someone, pick out my photos. Like someone who doesn't know your work, because that's what your potential clients are doing,
yeah, that's
right?
humble. I'm sure that would be a humbling exercise. I'm like, I
Oh,
know
it
that
was.
yeah, I'm like, I'm sure, I know, not I'm sure. I'm like, I know there are especially stages in my career where you like could not probably pick me out of a lineup.
Mhm. But it's not to say that that's good or bad. It's just that's what it is.
Hmm.
And I think a good a good exercise for mindset is instead to if you think like I can't pick because that's how I was. I can't like these people couldn't tell the difference between mine and these other five photographers because we all shoot the same. Well, why do we all shoot the same? Because I followed what I thought the market wanted, and so did they. And so
Hmm.
we're all following this like template versus it's what can I get that no one else can get. Um, but that only happens if you leave it open and have
Mm.
no expectations on the web.
Mm.
So,
I was gonna say, yeah, like how did you make this transition? Because I think that's both like personally and client facing. Because I think that's something that a lot of people, one, like you said, there's a risk. Like
mhm,
it's scary to like I know it took me an embarrassing amount of time even to just start shooting 35 millimeter film because I was like, that's so risky. What if I do it wrong? What if I miss an entire series of moments? Like I just shot an entire engagement session the other day on film and I was like, this is so scary to like take this
mhm.
risk. And it took me forever to get started. So I know there's like such a personal format or like personal series of things to overcome when you're trying something new, but then there's also the client facing of like, how do I warm up a clientele or a future clientele or an audience who's expecting maybe something a little bit more blueprinty? Like, how did you make that transition both internally and externally in a way that made sense for both you and your clients?
Well, one of the things is that I made personal work. Like before I made this transition in my wedding work, right, I was already shooting. I have always been shooting the way that I'm known for now. I've always been shooting like for my personal work, but it's a lot easier to be the same photographer both in your own life and at a wedding than it is to like flip this switch and be like, oh, now I'm a wedding photographer and I have to take these types of photographs. And I showed my personal work. So my audience, but it would always be like so different from my wedding, right? In the time when I was building my business, you were always building. In that time when I was building my business and my career, the one thing I did against the grain was I showed my life. I showed my personal photographs. I showed I wasn't just a business, and I never wanted to be a business. My fucking name is on the business name. Like it says Daniel Kim Photography. Like, well, where is Daniel Kim? I see Daniel Kim photography, but where's Daniel Kim? Like, who am I getting to show up to my wedding? You know, I realized this when I would show up to weddings and people were like, "Oh, I thought you were going to be like, a lot older." And you're like, 25. Now I was just like, "Oh, well, I guess you don't know a lot about it, right?" But then once I started showing my personal work and myself, I realized people are okay with it. People loved my personal work and my family, just like the portraits, uh, or the portraits that I would shoot, or just like the landscapes, and I would just experiment, and people would like it. But then all of a sudden, it's not okay to do that at a wedding. Well, my audience had already seen my personal work. So then the thing I did was, one, talk to my clients, being like, like these photographs that you've seen me post and stuff, and I would see that they like it or comment, be like, well, I would love to do this at your wedding. Like, I would love to do this. So I already had like a mini portfolio, but you can't do that unless you make personal. And the other thing too is I lowered the stakes. So I would like shoot for free. And this was during like COVID, like when I lost all my jobs. And that was the biggest risk. Like, it's not just me or me and my wife. Like, I got a daughter, I got mortgage, I got tuition to pay for. I have to, whereas it's just me and my wife doing this business. So when you lose all your jobs for the year and you need money, well, how bad do you want it? Are you willing to shoot for free to get to a certain point with your art, not your career, because this was not helping my career at the time. I needed money.
Mm-hmm.
But are you at a certain point where you're saying like, I'm willing to not make money when I need it the most right now in order to to do this? Uh, and so I lowered the stakes, because what are they gonna say? Hey, so we didn't, I would talk to my clients, but I would tell them like, but or potential clients, and I would say like, but I have this idea. I don't want to do this. And on the other side, you don't have to pay me.
Mm-hmm.
Worst comes to worst, you wanted to hire me to begin with. Worst comes to worst, you're going to get good photographs.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that's going to happen, really.
I love that. I think that's something I've been trying to do a lot is free shoots now that I just started shooting again for the first time in years. And it's been so liberating to like get back into it for the art rather than thinking
Mhm.
about the bills, because even though it's so cool and it's fucking amazing that we can earn the money that we can as creatives, there's also just like a psychological shift that takes place when your rent depends on it. And I
Mhm.
can't even imagine with a family. Like I'm like, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother series of stakes. And so I think being able to connect with yourself enough to be like, okay, but I am passionate about the art and the art is important. And so I want to do this just for the art. Like that's such an incredible thing to do. And also for I think people to hear.
Yeah. And I think if you're a little bit, because here's the thing, I would never tell somebody do this if it means not putting food on.
Yeah.
I was willing to do it because I basically told myself, you better fucking do this, motherfucker. Like, you have a lot on the line. So if you're doing this, you're going all in. You're going all in. Um, because you do not have a chance to lose, especially right now. Like, not lose. You don't have a chance to not do this. Um, but some people, they have like 5 kids and they're doing this, and that's a lot higher stakes than me. So I always just tell people, it's great it's great to be a great artist, it's great, starving artist, but it's a lot better when your stomach is full. So I always tell people, if you're gonna do this, pay your bills first and then add this. I see this not as a free shoot. I see this as instead of them paying me to shoot, I am paying myself to shoot out of my own money. When you start shifting your mindset into this is not free, I'm investing into myself, you will go into that wedding and you're going to be like, I'm giving this like 300%. So I ain't making money on this. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people I've noticed when they do it for free, they go, they're a little bit lackadaisical. Like it's free. It's no, it is not free. You are losing money to do this. You know, you're investing it into yourself. So you actually need to really, really, really show up.
Mm.
And if you go into it with that mindset, I believe, I mean, you'll see, I think a lot of people will see how much they've been holding back on the business.
No, I think
So
that's incredible. I think that's like an amazing way to shift work that is done without physical money, like
mhm,
monetary payment is, yeah, this is an investment in yourself. And so I'm like, I always think of it like I paid for my own college when I did go to college,
mhm.
and I worked so much harder than I would have if my parents had paid for it, or like my friends whose parents did pay for it. Like I was busting my ass because it was coming out of my own pocket. And I
Yes.
watched my friends who their parents paid for it, and they were just chilling, they were just there for the vibes, which is fine. But I love this idea of like thinking of your free quote unquote shoots as this, like, this is an investment in myself. This is me investing money because I took an L here. And like, so this is my opportunity to like really give it 100%. I think that's incredible.
And a little tip, I think this is a lot better, in my personal opinion, than doing a style shoot
Mm,
because one, style shoot, if you were to set up a style, you're paying for that. But this way, you're literally getting a whole wedding to shoot, right? This is the beginner's mindset. Like, would you at the time, would you 15 years ago, would you like shoot this for free if you had the chance? This wedding, where you're
mm,
at now, because the level of weddings that you are at now is probably different than when you first started. So if you were first starting, would you be like, would you go to a photographer and be like, I will second shoot this wedding for free? Like, if you just give me a chance, you got to have that mindset with
mm,
the skills that you have and with
mm-hmm.
the wedding and everything that is in front of you.
Yeah, I
It
love that.
lights that fire under your ass.
Oh,
So,
that's incredible. Yeah, I think that's such a like good perspective shift when I think once you've been doing it for so many years, it kind of becomes a routine. It feels monotonous and you
mhm.
just like go in, you do the thing. So I love this idea of being like bringing back that like tenacity that you had when you were like first starting. Like, man, I was willing to do like you're so gritty when you first start. Like you're like, I will do
Yes.
anything. I'm making this happen. And yeah, it's crazy to think about how we view our work now as so casual when like us at the beginning would have been just chomping at the bit in order to
Yes.
shoot something like that.
And it's funny that you say like sometimes we look at because I've done it too. Like everything I talk about, I've done too. And when we look at a wedding as like we shoot it casually, right? I saw. Have you seen The Bear?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay, there's this scene. Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen it, but it's not a spoiler alert. Well, kind of.
It's okay.
Okay, there's this scene in The Bear. It's a Michelin star restaurant, right?
Mhm.
So one of the guys is going to work at a Michelin star restaurant just to learn. And he's like, he's grumpy. He's like, I don't want to be here, like blah blah blah. But his boss, who's a chef and had connections there and worked there, said, I want you to go and just be there for a week. So he shows up, and all they're doing, having him do is clean floors. And he's like, this is beneath me. But all he's doing all day is polishing floors, fork after fork after fork, hours and hours. And he basically got sent aside by the manager at that Michelin star restaurant. And then the guy goes, hey, here's the thing, man. People save up all year. They save up 2 years. There's teachers that have saved up all year to be here for this experience for 2 hours, all year for 2 hours. And you think this is beneath you. And the thing is, yes, this might be every day for you, But every night here is the fucking Super Bowl because these people have been looking forward to this all year. And I thought that's weddings.
Mm,
And by not giving ourselves the best opportunities and pushing ourselves, well, what is that for the client? Because we talk about ourselves a lot. And I know right now, up until now, it's been all of us as artists, but we're serving clients. And if you show up for your clients even if it's like a double header, to us, it's like, oh, this is I noticed this during COVID when I was doing like 5 weddings a week from reschedules. I was
hmm
just like, man, this is my like 5th wedding in like 8 days. But guess what? That was their one wedding they were waiting.
hmm
And so showing up with that mindset, you know, not it's not about you. It's not about us. We might bring our style into it, but ultimately it's for the client.
Yeah.
And so that's what really drives me. Ever since I saw that scene, I was
Yeah, I
like,
love
whoa.
that. I'm like, I love thinking of it as like this Super Bowl. I think everyone, I'm like, that's been such a perspective shift. I think also just after the pandemic of just like, this is such a huge, ginormous deal that now, especially post pandemic, like most people have been waiting years longer than they expected. Like, we're still kind of seeing that. I think we're kind of coming out of post pandemic weddings now, but like, we're seeing these people that have waited for years and years and years. And like, to have this one day and how fucking like what a fucking honor it is that we get to be the ones that preserve that for them. Like that's crazy. Like when you actually think
Mhm.
about it, I'm like that is the
Yes.
craziest job that we could ever be given is that we're in charge of capturing and preserving this day that they have been looking forward to for years at minimum. Like at minimum they have been
Mhm.
planning this for years. And we get to capture such a complex and beautiful thing for them to look back for years and years and years forever.
Yes. Yeah. I think people push themselves harder when it becomes outside of ourselves.
Mm,
So when it's
absolutely.
just for us, I mean, that's people can push themselves hard for just themselves, but it's like, man, if I was fighting for my life, I'm fighting. If my daughter's life is on the line, dude, I'm destroying, right? And it's the same thing with me. I think about my own relationship with my wife, and I think, man, like, wait, because we've been together since 19, and
Mm,
I think, man, this couple has made it.
yeah.
This is a big deal. Wow, wait, they've known each other since high school, and they've been together for 15 years already. Okay, wait a second, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Then you start, okay. The other thing too is I've noticed when I started thinking about this and I was giving everything, like everything at a wedding, I didn't, if something didn't happen, like I didn't get or there was like a mistake, I didn't beat myself up because I literally left it all on the table. What
Mm,
else could I? But by having that mindset, when you start taking risks, you go, no, I left it all on the line. Okay, maybe the shot didn't turn out, maybe my idea didn't turn out. I gave this everything, and my clients saw that I gave it everything. And
mm,
I think that's really what is holding people back is I think they hold back on their potential at these weddings. You know, is it a difference between, hey, like I'll give one example. There was this wedding that I shot with my friend Henry, who's a videographer,
mm,
and we flew out to Texas to shoot it. We were scheduled for a certain amount of time, but we got there. I was just like, this group has known each other since like they were kids.
oh,
Wait, I can't just show up when she puts on her dress. Think about what's all the stuff that happened before our wedding. That's the stuff people remember, right? Let me show up early. And then we showed up early. Um, we went to the rehearsal dinner the day before, even though we weren't. like paid to shoot it because I was just like, let me just get in with this. And then it was time to leave. And me and him were looking at each other and we're like, no, this party is, it's still rage, it's still going. And we were like, I have a feeling we should stay. Even though it would be 2 more hours of free work, right? But we stayed. And that last 2 hours, I got some of the best photos of my entire career
Wow.
because it wasn't about the money. It's never about the money, but it was like, what is more important,
Mm.
right? Some people, they're just like, hey, it's 9 o'clock, later I'm out, which I totally understand. Get paid for your time, get that cheddar, right? But when my hours were up and I told the bride and groom, like, hey, like we're gonna stay, it's my time. That is, I am now on the clock free. So guess what? I get to shoot it.
Mm.
And that's why those photographs came out because I took the risks. And so that's how I was able to implement that into like a current client web. Yeah.
I love this idea of being like, how can I? Because it's also like, that looks so good on you. Like, that's also like such a good like relationship builder with your client, like in a
Hmm.
way to show them that this is like more than just a monetary transaction, right? Like, it's so multifold in the like, you get to go above and beyond for your client, and now you get to experiment in a way where there isn't pressure, right? If you weren't, like you said, if you're not paid to be there during that time, like, you could take one amazing photo, and that's one amazing photo that they didn't pay for and didn't wouldn't have had otherwise, and that's
Hmm.
incredible. That's incredible for both you and your clients.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it really does. Like if you don't love this job,
Oh, don't
right?
do this
Then that
job.
probably, yeah, then it probably don't, that won't happen. And here's the thing, I always tell people it's okay to view this wedding photography as a job. Like that's totally okay. Like I tell people, hey, it's a good way to make money. You're good at it and it comes naturally, but you're not thinking about it as like intensely as as others. That's totally cool. But if you this I'm speaking to like the people who are like, no, like if you're feeling like you are uncomfortable with your art right now, I always say that if you're uncomfortable, it's because that's your body or your mind or yourself trying to get you to move.
Mm,
It's trying to get you to move to be in a place where you can be uncomfortable. But then if you are comfortable, don't stay there for too long because it's hard to get out of bed when you're sleeping in silk sheets.
mm,
So you gotta like I bring a lot of the principles that I look at in my business, I bring from like fighters and combat sports,
mm,
from like athletics. Um, and I look at so I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I look at the people who are like world champions and are like good competitors and like boxers, you know. And you hear about stories about Floyd Mayweather and all these big names. Yeah, they might be driving fancy cars, but there's stories about like Floyd where he would be at a club, like, like partying, and then instead of driving home, he goes, no, I'm gonna run home. And so that grind is always there. And so I take all of those principles from athletics and sports and bring it into art. Because why not? Why can't it's still a discipline. Art is a discipline. Just like a martial art, just like a sport, it's a discipline. And it's the habits that an artist does that make the artist, right?
mm.
And so you just apply that same principles from sport over into art. And ever since I started doing that, I've noticed big shift. Because then I started taking it seriously.
Yeah, you have to.
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. What would you to kind of like wrap it up, if you say there are photographers listening that have been like, either feeling stunted or are feeling like there's a shift that needs to happen within their work to be more genuine to themselves and to their clients and to their artwork, is there like one piece of advice or even like an actionable item that you would tell them about?
Yeah. Well, there's two. It's a two step.
Perfect.
First one is uh, give yourself some grace, because by giving yourself some grace, you stop treating yourself like a kid that's being punished. And it's like you hit a dog, like you can train the dog, but eventually that dog it's not going to end it. So give yourself some grace. Be like, hey, wait a second. I'm making money shooting photos. Like that's crazy. Like when you think about it, like I'm not laying brick, I'm not doing tile, I'm not doing roofing, I'm not, you know, um, there's so many other things that you get paid way less for, right? And so just be like, hey, I did it, and start there. And then the second thing is make personal. You have to make it fun again. Photography should never. There's times the business it will get hard. Photography should be fun. And it should be what you like, because when you do something that you like, you become obsessive. And when you become obsessive, it's when you grow. And when you grow, get to a certain point, and then the cycle starts all. And that's my advice.
Oh, Daniel, this was amazing. I'm like, this like ignited a fire in me. I'm like, I'm so excited to re-listen to this episode. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm like, I'm so thrilled that we could have you on, and I'm so happy I got to learn from you. I'm so excited for everyone else to learn from you. We'll obviously link all of your information in the show notes, but can you tell everyone where they can find you on the internet and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me by my website, danielkimphoto.com, and then through my Instagram, danielkimphoto, and that's pretty much it.
Perfect. We love that. I love when it's just consistent names across the board. So
Yeah.
that's perfect. Well, thank you so, so much again for your time and for your knowledge and for your wisdom. This has been amazing. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.